This subject is a bit scary. There seems to be a jungle of ancient ship names that turn up with different uses and different spellings in different books. Let's have a look at the world of war galley names and try to cut through the typological tangle. The first part of the tangle comes from the mishmash of languages used. We have modern languages used to describe the ancient war galleys with all their variations. Then we have the two ancient languages from where we have most of our information. Ancient Greek was widespread as the Greeks set up colonies around the Mediterranean, far beyond their homelands. Then Alexander the Great somewhat boosted the use of Greek. Even though he didn't last long, his successors made sure Asia Minor, the Levant, and Egypt were also Hellenized. But the Hellenistic world was gradually dominated by a city-state from Italy. The Romans conquered the Mediterranean lands, and their language of Latin became dominant. But Greek remained the language of much education, especially in the eastern Mediterranean, and many historians wrote in Greek. From about 700 to 200 BC, the historical Mediterranean world is to us largely a Greek world. From 200 onward, Latin displaces Greek, and the world of the war galley is Latin, down to its end around 400 AD. So here is a range of ship types we can read in the various ancient Greek sources. Quite a range, and there are many more besides. How can we strain the mixture to begin and classify these vessels? The first step is to divide sailing ships from galleys. We are interested in galleys here, with oars as well as sails. This lot are all sailing ships. If we look at the names, there isn't much of a system here. Now, if we look at galleys, we know these are all galleys from other references. There are patterns in the name endings. ERES, KONTERES, OROS. And the first part of the names are actually numbers. If we look at Greek numbers for a minute, we can recognize them in the galley names. A quick look is all it takes to see. We have the PENTERES, and then the number pente, which is 5, for example, and the PENTEKONTORES, a name with 50 in it. Now the second part of all these names is the giveaway. The giveaway that we are discussing a galley. The suffixes ERES and OROS are always part of galley names, and another, EROS. There is no surviving definition or explanation of these suffixes amongst the ancient Greek writing that survives, but we have several similar words which all relate to rowing. On this ground, a hypothetical root element, ere, probably existed, from which the galley suffix is constructed. So oros, eros, eres all indicate galleys, the essential meaning of those names being rowing. We can now look at three groups among the galley names. The first is those ships known by the total number of oars they had. The EIKOSOROS is a galley rowed by 20 men. This is not a very large ship and was probably never armed with a ram. This is the type mentioned by Homer. It's an ancient, smaller galley rowed by the men who fought when it attacked another ship or came to land for a raid. The TRIAKONTOROS, or TRIAKONTERES, is a ship rowed by 30 men, 15 oars aside. Then we have the PENTEKONTOROS, or PENTEKONTERES, rowed by 50. This is a substantial vessel, up to 35 metres long. We know it could be fitted with a ram, and it was a true war galley. The TRIAKONTERES and the PENTEKONTERES continue into historical times as auxiliary ships. Even when the TRIERES has become dominant as the standard war galley, they are named in fleet lists. The EIKOSOROS is also found at a later date, but just as a handy merchant galley, not as a warship. The next group of names all have lower numbers than 20. We know from many written references that these ships are larger than an EIKOSOROS. The largest, the DEKERES, is the largest war galley we have evidence for as participating in a sea battle. So this group are set apart from the first, and the number element can no longer mean the total number of oars. 3 or 7 or 10 oars would mean tiny rowing boats. So just to what do these names refer? We shall use the TRIERES as the example to explain this group, because we have so much information about this type. The 3 in the name TRIERES, a 3-rowing ship, refers to a basic unit in the organisation of the rowing system of the ship. In a rowed ship, there is a crucial basic measurement which must be respected in its construction. This measurement is the space given to each man within which he can work his oar along the length of the ship. This distance was known to the ancients and almost a standard, but it varied a little from place to place and from time to time. The distance is roughly a modern metre. It is now known as a room within a ship, or a half room if it refers to just one side of the ship. In Greek, this was called the metron, the measure. The same word is used for the units of rhythm in classical Greek poetry and has come down to us as the measurement of length. When extra tiers of oars were added on a galley, this metron had to be respected. The extra tiers needed space to row, and they had to be offset from the original rowers, or they would have to sit very high above them for the new oars to clear the heads of those below. The new tiers fit within the original metron like this. Another tier, as in a TRIERES, will also fit in the same way, again offset. The 3 men rowing at 3 different levels in the TRIERES can be seen to fit inside the single metron. This unit is the building block of a TRIERES rowing system. This is what is meant by the name TRIERES. The ship is rowed by 3. It is a 3-rowing ship. One more little Greek lesson helps us to support this interpretation. TRIERES are also called triskalmos. This means 3-tholed. The thole is the wooden pin around which a leather band was tied to hold the oar in place. This created the fulcrum about which the oar was worked. 3-tholed is a description which means there were 3 tholes within the metron. The only way we can fit 3 tholes in is if they are set above one another, and the 3 tholes are also offset. This means 3 oars and 3 men, exactly what we think of as a TRIERES. So far, so good. We can suggest all the ships in this group share the same type of rowing system. There are 4, 5, 7, 10 men in each half room of the ship. What we cannot tell from these names, however, is how the men are arranged. How many oars are there? The oars could be arranged in 1, 2 or 3 tiers. And how many men work each oar? There is still a lot of uncertainty. To work this out, we need more evidence, and we need it for each ship type. This diagram shows how uncertain we can be about the rowing system of a ship, even when we can be sure that there were a specific number of men in the basic rowing unit of that ship. A TETRERES, a 4-rowing ship, can be organised in several ways. The ship has 4 men in each half room, but they could be organised as having 3, 2 or 1 tier of oars, with 1, 2 or 4 men per individual oar, and the name alone doesn't allow us to choose which is most likely. Next we have the group of names with larger numbers and the ERES ending. These ships have 2 characteristics. Firstly, they are only known from 1 or very few examples, and secondly, we have almost no accounts of them fighting. If we followed the same system as with the previous group, we would expect more and more men in the rowing unit or half room. However, there's a maximum of 5 men that can be set to work on one oar, and if 5 men are set to work on one oar, it can't be worked at all except at a low angle to the water. This is because of the difference in height for the outermost and innermost rowers. With 5 men, even with the oar at a low angle, the innermost man ends up standing and must reach to make the full stroke. At the same time, the man nearest the thole is almost sitting and doing much less work. More than one level of oars like this seems impractical. The galleys of Louis XIV were rowed like this, and they could only manage speeds much less than 7 knots, which is a minimum for ramming combat. The 20s, 30s, and the one known 40, the TESSAKONTAROS, must have been organised in a different way. Exactly how this was accomplished is unknown. We can speculate, but there's no hard evidence. This is a subject for another Poopcast. In summary, Greek war-galley typology indicates 3 classes of vessel. The smallest were known by the total number of rowers in the ship, the 20, 30 and 50. The usual warship types ranged in size from TRIERES to DEKERES, with 3 to 10 men in the rowing unit. Ships larger than a 5 were exceptional, and until the Romans built their heavy fleets based on the PENTERES in the Punic Wars, the TRIERES was the usual war galley. When the Romans established their Mediterranean hegemony, there were no navies to fight, just pirates, and the usual warship was again a TRIERES or even smaller. The large galleys were constructed in a way we do not know or yet understand. Some were probably siege machine platforms rather than ships meant to fight at sea. Few examples of galleys larger than a 10 were ever built, and most of them were in service with Ptolemaic Egypt for a limited period. In fact, few maritime states ever built anything larger than a PENTERES. That is the long and the short of Greek war-galley typology. Another time we can look at Latin ship types, and another time still we can take a closer look at the very large galleys.